Hello. President Obama has imposed sanctions on Russian individuals and intelligence agencies, a response to Russian cyber attacks during the presidential election and harassment of American officials. 35 Russian diplomats have been given 72 hours to leave the country, and 2 compounds are being closed. The Russian government, which has denied any involvement in hacking, is considering retaliation. Laura Bicker reports from Washington.
Russia stands accused of trying to help Donald Trump become president. Moscow had been warned, but now it's being punished for interfering in US elections. America's top intelligence agencies believe a cyber attack on the emails of Hillary Clinton's closest aides was orchestrated by the highest levels of Russian government. But Mr. Trump has always questioned the evidence.
Once they hack, if you don't catch them in the act, you're not going to catch them. They have no idea if it's Russia or China or somebody. It could be somebody sitting in a bed someplace.
But the CIA and the FBI both agree the hackers, they say, were Russian. And now Mr. Trump is softening his stance. In a statement, he said, "It's time for our country to move on to bigger and better things. Nevertheless, in the interests of our country and its great people, I will meet with leaders of the intelligence community next week in order to be updated on the facts of this situation." President Obama said all Americans should be alarmed. He's ordered that 35 officials are expelled. They're believed to have close links with Russian intelligence. They have just 72 hours to leave the country. And he's closing 2 Russian compounds, one in New York and the other in Maryland. White House officials said Russia had to pay a price for what they described as an extraordinary attack on US democratic systems. President Obama warned that further action is to come at a time of his choosing. Russia described the closing of its US compounds as the death throes of political corpses and warned it will hit back.
Because the cost of expelling Russian diplomats is going to lead to a reduction or expelling of US diplomats from Russia, it's not clear how this kind of cost is going to be one in which the United States has a clear advantage.
President Obama has dealt his strongest response yet to Russian hacking on US soil. But he has only weeks left in office, and many are now wondering, what will his successor do? Laura Bicker, BBC News, Washington.
For more analysis, here's our North America editor, John Sopel, in Washington.
Well, I think he's got a sliding scale of responses that he can give to this, from the metaphorical slap on the wrist to something much firmer. This is much firmer, and I think underlines the president's view that not only was it unacceptable for Russia to have sought to intervene in the US presidential election, he wants to send a warning out to other countries who might be thinking of doing likewise. That said, the Russians have said it is unjustified, it is without merit, it is wrong, and of course, when have you ever heard an intelligence agency of a foreign country say, yeah, OK, we did it, we did wrong? Russia has promised retaliation, the nature of which we don't know. But the real X factor in all of this is what Donald Trump decides to do. He was scathing and dismissive about early reports saying that the FBI and CIA were involved. So ultimately, he's got a choice. Who does he believe? Vladimir Putin or his own intelligence services? And you would imagine there could only be one answer to that question.
John Sopel there for us in Washington. The Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar is with the Republican Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham on a 3-day tour of the Baltics, Georgia and Ukraine, and they are there talking about cybercrime. We asked Senator Klobuchar about President Obama's sanctions.
Well, I think that this is a very strong initial start. I think more will happen. We're going to have hearings in Congress. We finally have a public report that declassified some of this information. I am in Lithuania right now with Senator John McCain and Senator Lindsey Graham, and we are here to stand up for our allies in Eastern Europe and NATO, and to also make the point that this isn't about one political party. I'm a Democrat. They're both Republicans. One of them was a Republican candidate for president. And we see this not about one candidate or one party, but as an assault on democracy. This is something that is not just about American democracy. It's about all democracies. There's upcoming elections in Germany and France. And for the U.S. just to roll over and to let this happen with no response would have been a huge mistake.
Senator Cloudbush there. Let's go live to Washington. Katie Bowe-Williams is there. She is the national security reporter at The Hill. Thanks very much for your time. I guess this could fairly be described as quite a late response. Do you think it's meaningful? Do you think it's just a gesture? And what retaliation do you expect?
Well, there are certainly some critics, both Republicans and Democrats, who have looked at what the Obama administration has done today and said, too little, too late. With regards to the sanctions, the people that are targeted, the people in the organizations that have been targeted by these sanctions are 2 intelligence agencies and several key officials at one of those agencies. These are not people that are going to have deep involvement with the U.S. financial system. So from an economic perspective, there's a question about whether or not this will really sting or whether it's largely symbolic. And critics are saying, I don't know how much bite this has.
Clearly someone at the Russian embassy had a bit of time to kill. They did a very creative response involving talk of Cold War déjà vu, the last gasp of political corpse, even a picture of a lame duck. How does Mr. Trump's response strike you? He warned, of course, of a rigged election dozens of times as a candidate. Now, after evidence is laid out of Russian hacking, he urges the country to move on. And he says, nevertheless, he will take a security briefing next week.
Well, we'll see what Donald Trump chooses to do on January 20th. Because the authority to levy these sanctions is one that comes from the White House, it's done under executive order, Donald Trump can simply undo this within his first hour in the Oval Office if he so chooses. And one of the interesting things about this is that it could set up a bit of a split in between congressional leaders, even in his own party, and Donald Trump. If Trump chooses to continue to deny that there was any Russian involvement in the election and that, as he says, the country simply needs to move on, he may find that there's some pushback from lawmakers like Senator John McCain and Senator Lindsey Graham, who are both Republicans, who have both said, this is not enough and we're going to pursue broader sanctions in the new Congress next year.
So do you expect any lasting impact from all this?
We'll see. We'll see what, at this point, it's difficult to say. It depends on very much on what Donald Trump decides. If he has these briefings with intelligence officials next week and they are able to convince him that, yes, there was a substantive, meaningful effort by the Russian government to interfere in the election, and he determines that that is something that requires a U.S. response, you may see him double down. Conversely, if he continues in the vein that he's been going in, which is this didn't happen, and this is an attempt by the Democratic Party to delegitimize my election, you may see this boil down to a fight in between Trump and Congress.
Katie Bowe-Williams from The Hill, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.